So you want to own a private prison. You look at the macroeconomic data and see a business with mathematically guaranteed demand. The United States incarcerates more of its population per capita than almost any other nation on Earth. You envision a massive, highly secure concrete facility filled with a completely captive audience. You sign a contract with the state or federal government, they send you the inmates, they cut you a massive check every single month, and you run a hyper-efficient, recession-proof real estate monopoly. It looks like the ultimate infrastructure play, backed by the full faith and credit of the government. It is not. The modern private prison industry is a politically toxic, legally radioactive, heavy logistics nightmare. It is a business where your profit margin relies entirely on cutting corners on human lives, where your primary workforce is chronically underpaid and constantly turning over, where a single lawsuit over medical neglect can wipe out years of profit, and where your entire multi-million-dollar real estate empire can be completely legislated out of existence by a single stroke of a pen from a newly elected governor or president. You will understand exactly why owning a prison defies every standard rule of commercial real estate. You will learn the brutal, perverse incentives of the per diem rate. You will understand how the industry extracts hundreds of millions of dollars directly from the families of the incarcerated through astronomical commissary and telecom fees. And you will realize why the massive publicly traded corporations that run this industry are actively trying to stop running physical prisons at all. Let us start at the very beginning with the build-out. You cannot just buy a plot of land, build a giant concrete box with barbed wire, and wait for the police to drop people off. The private prison industry is entirely dependent on government contracts. Before you pour a single yard of concrete, you have to win a request for proposal from a state Department of Corrections or a federal agency like Immigration and Customs Enforcement. To win that contract, you have to hire armies of lobbyists. You have to convince state legislators that you can house, feed, and guard their overflow inmates significantly cheaper than the state can do it themselves. And then you face the NIMBY problem. Not in my backyard. Nobody wants a maximum security prison built next to their suburb. So you are forced to build in economically depressed, highly rural areas where the local municipality is so desperate for property taxes and minimum wage guard jobs that they will actually welcome a prison into their community. Building the facility is phenomenally expensive. You are not building a warehouse. You are building a self-contained, highly secure fortress designed to prevent human beings from escaping while simultaneously keeping them from killing each other. You have to build reinforced concrete cell blocks, specialized centralized locking mechanisms, isolation wings, medical infirmaries, commercial kitchens, and heavily fortified perimeter fences equipped with razor wire and motion sensors. The capital expenditure for a modern 1,000-bed medium security facility can easily exceed $100 million. And you are financing all of this heavy debt while knowing that the government can often cancel your operating contract with just 90 days of notice if the political winds change. But let us assume you build it and you get the contract. Now you enter the core economic engine of the private prison system, which is the per diem rate. The government does not just pay you a flat monthly rent for the building. They pay you a specific daily rate for every single human being sitting in one of your beds. Depending on the state, the security level, and the specific contract, this per diem rate generally hovers between $60 and $90 per inmate per day. Out of that roughly $75 a day, you have to pay the guards, you have to provide 3 meals, you have to provide clothing, toilet paper, facility maintenance, and most importantly, medical care. Whatever is left over after all of those daily operational expenses are paid is your profit margin. This creates the most dangerous, perverse economic incentive structure in modern business. In a normal hotel or apartment building, you make more money by providing a better service and charging a premium. In a private prison, your revenue is strictly capped by the government per diem contract. Therefore, the absolute only way you can generate a return for your Wall Street shareholders is by ruthlessly slashing your operating expenses. You are financially incentivized to provide the absolute bare minimum quality of food. You are financially incentivized to pay your correctional officers the lowest possible wage, which leads to massive understaffing, catastrophic turnover rates, and extreme danger for both the guards and the inmates. But the biggest, most aggressive cuts almost always happen in medical care. When you house 1,000 inmates, you are responsible for their physical health. The prison population is statistically much older and chronically sicker than the general public. They have high rates of diabetes, heart disease, hepatitis C, and severe mental health crises. If an inmate gets cancer or needs a specialized surgery, the private prison operator is usually the one footing the bill out of that $75 per diem rate. To prevent medical costs from completely destroying their profit margins, private prisons frequently outsource the healthcare to secondary, cut-rate private medical contractors. These medical contractors operate under their own strict budgets and are structurally incentivized to deny specialized care, delay transfers to expensive outside civilian hospitals, and rely heavily on cheap painkillers instead of actual long-term treatment. Because of this structural denial of care, private prisons are constantly defending themselves against massive, multi-million-dollar wrongful death and medical neglect lawsuits. One successful civil rights lawsuit filed by the family of an inmate who died from a highly treatable infection can instantly wipe out the entire profit margin of that facility for the year. But the perverse incentives do not stop with cutting costs. They extend to keeping the beds full. You have built a $100 million facility with massive debt payments. If crime drops, or if the state decides to reform its sentencing laws and release nonviolent drug offenders, your prison empties out and your per diem revenue collapses. To prevent this, the massive private prison corporations historically negotiated lockup quotas into their contracts. These are occupancy guarantees where the state legally promises to keep the private prison at 80, 90, or even 100% capacity, regardless of the actual crime rate. If the state fails to provide enough bodies to fill the beds, the taxpayers have to pay the private prison company millions of dollars in empty bed penalty fees. You are literally charging the government a massive fee because there are not enough criminals to fill your building. But the $75 a day from the government is only half of the revenue model. The other half comes directly from the families of the incarcerated. This is the shadow economy of the carceral system. When a person goes to prison, they are entirely reliant on the prison commissary for basic human needs that the facility refuses to provide in sufficient quantities. If an inmate wants a warm winter shirt, a decent bar of soap, a packet of ibuprofen, or a tube of toothpaste, they have to buy it from the commissary. And the commissary is usually operated by a private vendor that significantly marks up the prices. A bottle of generic shampoo that costs $2 at a local pharmacy might cost $6 in the prison commissary. The private prison operators take a percentage of every single transaction. And the exploitation is even worse when it comes to communication. For decades, specialized prison telecommunications companies have held absolute monopolies over the phone lines and digital tablets inside these facilities. Because the inmates have absolutely no alternative, these companies historically charged astronomical rates for a simple 15-minute phone call to a loved one. In some states, families were paying $1 a minute just to hear the voice of their son or daughter. And the private prison operator gets a massive kickback, legally referred to as a site commission, from the telecom company for granting them the exclusive contract. The Federal Communications Commission has recently stepped in with new regulations under the Martha Wright Reed Act to begin capping these predatory per-minute phone and video rates. But for years, this was one of the most reliable, high-margin revenue streams in the entire industry. You are systematically extracting billions of dollars a year from the poorest, most economically vulnerable families in the country, who are desperately trying to support their incarcerated relatives. But the traditional private prison model is dying, and the operators know it. The political risk has become completely unmanageable. The optics of incarcerating human beings for corporate profit have become toxic to major investors. In recent years, massive political movements have successfully pressured major Wall Street banks to stop lending money to private prison corporations. Entire states, like California and New York, have passed laws banning the use of private prisons entirely. In 2021, the President of the United States signed an executive order directing the Department of Justice not to renew its contracts with privately operated criminal detention facilities. The traditional business of locking American citizens in concrete boxes for a per diem rate is slowly being legislated out of existence. So, how do these massive, multi-billion-dollar corporations survive? They pivoted. They completely changed the definition of what it means to own a prison. First, they aggressively shifted away from state criminal inmates and moved into federal immigration detention. The major companies realized that Immigration and Customs Enforcement, or ICE, was desperately looking for massive amounts of bed space to hold undocumented immigrants pending deportation hearings. Because ICE detention is technically civil detention, not criminal incarceration, it falls into a massive legal gray area that often bypasses state-level private prison bans. Today, an enormous percentage of the revenue generated by the major private prison companies comes directly from federal immigration contracts, running massive detention centers near the southern border. But the most brilliant and cynical pivot has nothing to do with physical buildings at all. The private prison companies have realized that brick and mortar real estate is expensive, heavily regulated, and prone to riots. So, they have moved into what they call alternatives to incarceration. They are investing heavily in electronic monitoring, ankle bracelets, and specialized behavioral tracking software. They are buying up halfway houses and mandatory drug treatment centers. If the political tide is turning toward criminal justice reform and releasing people from physical prisons, the private companies want to own the digital prison that tracks them when they go home. The economics of an ankle monitor are staggering compared to a physical prison bed. When you put an ankle monitor on a parolee, you do not have to feed them. You do not have to provide medical care. You do not have to pay guards to watch them. You do not have to build a $100 million concrete fortress. You simply charge the parolee themselves a daily fee of $10 to $30 to rent the ankle monitor that the court is legally forcing them to wear. You are shifting the entire financial burden of incarceration directly onto the individual. If they cannot afford to pay the daily fee, which is incredibly common for people trying to re-enter the workforce with a felony record, it is considered a violation of their parole conditions, and they are sent back to a physical prison. It is the ultimate asset-light business model. The gross margin on a GPS ankle bracelet, a piece of plastic and circuitry that costs maybe $100 to manufacture, is astronomically higher than the margin on a physical prison bed, and it carries almost none of the liability, none of the medical risk, and significantly less of the negative political optics. The major corporations are slowly transforming from private prison operators into massive, decentralized, high-tech surveillance companies. This is the reality sitting behind the barbed wire and the cinder block walls. You are buying into a business that requires the upfront capital of a heavy industrial plant, operates under the constant, terrifying threat of medical lawsuits and human rights violations, and relies on an economic model that financially incentivizes human suffering and systemic neglect. The margin on a good day is entirely dependent on keeping beds full, cutting the food budget, and overcharging a captive audience for basic necessities. The state outsources its moral responsibility. The families of the incarcerated pay the hidden taxes. The federal government provides the immigration contracts that keep the balance sheets alive. And the digital ankle monitors provide the high-margin, politically safe future of the industry. The business of owning a prison is not about holding the keys to the cell anymore. It is about holding the contract to the entire carceral ecosystem, regardless of whether the person is locked in a cage or confined to their own living room. If you found this video valuable, leave a like, subscribe, and comment below which business you want me to cover next.